It's the problem, isn't it? My number. Are we on number 5 already?
5, yeah.
We are, yeah.
Oh, well. My number 5 is a really late entry into the list. In fact, I had to rewrite my list.
Ooh.
And it's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree.
Oh, I've seen that.
It's billed as a cozy fantasy. Which I didn't know was a thing that existed, and now I need so much more of it in my life. You know what I mean? I'm like, didn't know this was a thing. I need all of them. And it's about a former orc barbarian who wants to hang up their sword and literally hangs up their sword in what they open as a coffee shop. So they've discovered that they can import this coffee from like gnomes, and then they open this coffee shop in a new town where they've never had coffee before. And it's just kind of like adorable as like this little misfit group of friends. There's like a succubus who helps sell the coffee, and there's like a little ratkin that helps make like baked goods, but they're all like genuine baked goods, but with like weird names because it's a fantasy book. So they make like cinnamon rolls and things like that. And like things happen in it, but just like at a really nice little pace. And it's just mostly about them opening up their own version of a coffee shop and how they manage to deal with, you know, like expanding their like kitchen, or like working out how they can sell coffee to go and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, it's lovely, and I need so much more of it in my life.
I feel like the pile of books that you're going to die under.
Yeah. Is that the first one or second? Because is there another?
There's another one, but it's a prequel apparently.
Ah, okay.
The other one is on my imminent to buy list. Because, you know, when you read a book and you're like, I'm going to put this down, and I instantly need the next book, and like anything else this author has ever written in my entire life, like everything, this is one of those books. So, heartily recommend it.
So you want my number 5 now?
I do.
Okay, another one that I absolutely loved. It's The Silent Man by David Fennell. So it's the 3rd book in the Grace Archer series, and I think both previous books have also been on my list.
I was going to say that.
Sounds about right. So, a father is murdered in the dead of night in his London home, his head wrapped tightly in tape, a crude, sad face penned over his facial features. But the victim's only child is left alive and unharmed at the scene. Met Police detectives Grace Archer and Harry Quinn have more immediate concerns. Notorious gangster Frankie White has placed a target on Archer's back, and there's no one he won't harm to get to her. Then, a second family is murdered, leaving young Uma Whitmore as the only survivor. With a serial killer at large, Archer and Quinn will stay alive long enough to find the connection between these seemingly random victims. Can they do it before another child is orphaned? How on earth I'm going to even begin to describe this book without giving things away is beyond me. It's a brilliant follow-on. Luckily, eyes are left alone in this one. Although, David Fennell's really good at doing something really weird and creepy to his victims. So automatically you kind of like, keep going. So there is so much to love about this. It's darkly funny in places. It's really creepy. And it's just one of those, the growing tension, and you're not quite sure where it's going. And I was really surprised by where it went. Absolutely loved it. Brilliant book. So that was my number 5. I think he was number 5 last year as well. But I think he was. Karen, number 5.
Well, so my number 5 is a non-crime. It's taken me 5 books to get there, but so I read this one as a buddy read with my best friend, and it's called Fair Rosalind by Natasha Solomons, and it's the untelling of Shakespeare's best known tale, Romeo and Juliet. So basically, I said in my review, I said, if there was ever a book I wish I could have written, it would be this one. I know that's it's just really original. So it's from the perspective of Rosalind, as the title says, who we sort of hear about in Romeo and Juliet, but she is sort of Rosalind is a typical of a woman of that time. She's got no sort of power in her life. She was going to be marrying. She thought she was going to be marrying Romeo, and then along comes Juliet, and she's out the door. But there's much more to it than this. The book is all about strong women characters. It's about women looking out for each other. It's there's so many different things in it that I really like the modern take on it. I think some purists may be shocked by some of the twists in the tale, but I thought it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. It was absolutely great, and it was a 5-star book for number 5.
Excellent.
I like that there's only one crime book at number 5.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't really read non-crime. It's not that I don't want to. I just tend to read for our interviews. So there is a book that I'm going to put in my honourable mentions, and there's another one that I'm still floating with exactly where it's going to go. A non-fiction one. I think it's going to be a joint first. I've decided. That's what I've been thinking about all week, and so. But you two do really read other things as well.
Yeah. I really like crime, and I did go through a phase in the beginning of the year where I didn't read that much crime, and now I've really gone, and I really realised that I'd missed it. So I do love it, and there's so much good stuff out there at the moment that it's it's very tempting.
Very easy to find good things to read, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is.
Shall we do our number 4s before we do our honourable mentions?
Okay, if that's the order we're going in, go for number 4, Cass.
Yeah. Well, that's how I've written them in my notes. So shall we do them in that order?
Yeah.
I think my number 4 is, again, probably not shocking at all. I think I've banged on about this book for ages since I read it, and it's The Devil's Playground by Craig Russell. Absolutely love this book. I've not read much by him before, but it's like it's just really interesting. So it's a book set in like different time periods, and it starts with like the 1920s when they're making what they're billing as the greatest horror movie ever made, but it ends up being like a kind of cursed production. And then there's a bit in like fast forwarding to the 60s where someone's going on the quest to find the only remaining copy of this movie, because it was like so cursed there's not even copies left of it.
That sounds really cool.
And it's just it's like fascinating and kind of creepy in equal measures. He obviously knows like that world so well, and it's like there's so many layers to it and subplots that happen at different times. And even the subplots are great. There's a subplot in it that's kind of set in the backwoods with this woman, and that story on its own, just that subplot, would be in my top 10 list.
Wow.
If you know what I mean, without the rest of the book.
Yeah.
So it like utterly needs to be in this, because like you can't even unpick which bit of the story you like the best. And they all kind of weave together to make this like really clever, kind of really different crime novel.
I really like the sound of that. That sounds really, really good.
I would say it's an absolute masterclass in kind of
novel. Right, okay, straight to the top of the list.
Yeah, has to be top of the list.
Yeah.
Great. And it's only my number 4.
My number 4 is a book. Sorry, Karen, were you going to say something?
No, sorry, I just said, aren't we lucky?
We are absolutely really lucky. My number 4 at this book, the title is so apt because it broke me. Oh, it broke me. And then I spoke to the author and she broke me. And oh my word. All of Us Are Broken by Fiona Cummins. Just, I I can feel my nose fizzing thinking about it. My eyes are filling up. I'm just going to read the blurb and try not to think too much about this absolutely breathtakingly, stunningly, heartbreakingly gorgeous book. The woman is a genius and she's really mean with this book. Anyone who's read it will know why she's mean. The family, after a year they want to forget, the Hardwick family set out to the Scottish Highlands for a much-needed holiday. We all know where that's going. The crimes, they are about to cross paths with a violent and dangerous young couple hell-bent on infamy. Their love story etched in blood and a dark past which must be uncovered. The detective. As the clock ticks down, Detective Saul Anguish is on the hunt to find the couple before more lives are lost. The mother, who will be forced to make an impossible decision. Fiona Cummins, All of Us Are Broken, is one of the greatest things I have ever read, and I will never, ever forgive her for writing it. That's it. So I'm going to say, love her, love the book, but no. You have to read it, and I'm sorry. I am sorry for what it's going to do to you, but it has to be read. That's it.
I don't know if I
can't
want
say
to.
anything else because I'm not giving anything away. And no, let's just move on. I can't talk about it. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. Karen, number 4, please move me on from this book.
So my number 4 is The Good Daughter by Laura Van Rensburg, which is I read in the summer. So basically it's set around so Abigail is a proud member of the New America Baptist Church. She lives with her family. She's a good daughter. She's a valued member of the community. And then she becomes the sole survivor of a fire that burns her family's house to the ground. And it's got a really dramatic start. And you know from the beginning that Abigail is living in the aftermath of the death of her the fire that has killed her parents. What happens then is the sort of unpicking of her life in past and present. Oh my God, it's so good. She's never questioned her life, and then something happens leading up to the fire, and just everything. Yeah, it's just amazing. I was completely in awe of how it was written. It's honestly so dark and so claustrophobic that you're there with her as these things happen, and it has got some difficult themes in it. It deals with sort of abuse and control and violence, but they're very relevant to the story. And the really clever bit is how she flashbacks between the past and the present, the author. And yeah, I can't reveal too much about it because the twists are insane and I loved it. So that's my number 4.
Nice.
Sounds really good.
It's very good. Very, very good. If you like sort of, there's a non-fiction book that's written by a girl, and I can't remember her name, Megan somebody, who was part of a Baptist church in America, and she leaves her family, and it's sort of loosely based around not her but around that sort of interesting sort of dynamic. And really, really believable and unbelievable, I think. I would say.
Sounds fascinating.
No, really, really good. Loved it.
It does sound really good. Honourable mentions?
How many have you two got?
I've got 4.
2,
I have got
4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7.
I've got 3. I feel a bit like I should maybe have another. Hang on. I'll just think of what I'll guess. I've got loads more. Like
This is the thing. I could have just read out everything I've read this year as my honourable mentions. This just feels like the hardest, most brutal thing. Leslie Lloyd was laughing at me because she said I'm always like this. I always just want all the books.
Yeah. I could have had 5, but I pared mine down a little.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I refuse.
Well, I'm sticking my 5th back in.
In fact, I have pared it down. This is like This is bare bones, you two. This is like
So do you
pulling things off that could have
basically
done
just say the titles for these?
it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go for 5 then.
Fair enough. I'm sticking my 5th back in mine then.
I'm sticking with 7. You two can have 2 more for all I care.
Right. Next
Well,
year.
My
I'll be-
honourable mentions, since I seem to be going first,
Yeah.
are Anything by Lucy Worsley.
Nice.
I couldn't pick one of hers. My dad introduced me to her this year, and I have flipped through like 3 of her books, and they're all fabulous. So, if you want non-fiction about history, she's your girl.
What else have you got?
Midnight in Chernobyl. Also
Bye.
non-fiction. Oh, I can't remember who it is by, but I will find it and put the book cover on when I edit it. It's non-fiction about the Chernobyl explosion. It's really good. The Three
Adam
Dahlias.
Higginson.
Yeah, that's the one. It's really good. The Three Dahlias by Katie Watson.
Oh, I've got that on my list to read.
It's brilliant.
I have read both of the books that are out, I think, this year, one after the other, because they were so good. I've read the second one straight afterwards.
It's in my hair.
And then my 2 kind of comic slash light novel recommendations that I couldn't fit into my top 10. One is Nimona, which is just glorious and wonderful. And watching the Netflix adaptation if you don't like comics, it's brilliant. And the other is Explosion, which is a series of light novels set in the world of Konosuba, featuring the best character in the world, who just sets off explosions every day.
I could do that.
I know, she's marvellous.
Sounds good. Sounds like a girl.
Go on, Sam, you're 7.
Yeah, I'm not even sorry. I'm just sorry there's not more on it. I did chop my list down from 29 with all my kids looking at me going, "You're absolutely mad." But yeah. Okay, I'm literally just going to reel off authors and titles. So, Let Me In by Claire McGowan. I love that book. The Institution by Helen Fields. Anthrax Island by D.L. Marshall. Unsolved by Heather Critchlow and The Unforgotten Dead by Fulton Ross. The Next to Die by Elliot Sweeney. And I only interviewed this author last night. And I'm sorry, Tony, I wasn't redoing my list. It's too much pressure. So What Dies Inside Us by Tony Forder. They are my 7. And it could easily have been more and more and more and more and more.
But 7's enough.
It's not. How rude. Karen, what are your 5?
So I have got The Mystery of the Yew Tree House by Leslie Thompson, because I really loved that book. I said it was amazing. I read it on when I was on holiday. It was great. The Last Passenger by Will Dean. Really enjoyed that one. The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett. I love anything by Janice Hallett. So then this one was a bonus. Once Upon a Monster, which is by Robert Dinsdale, which is a sort of retelling of the I cannot remember. I've gone blank. I'll have to come back to that one. And The Escape by Ruth Kelly, which I absolutely loved, and I just finished it this week, so that was a late entry, but a very worthy one. The Minotaur, that's the word I was looking for. It's a retelling of the Minotaur.
I love the Minotaur. Love that.
Yes. Yeah, so that's my 5.
Fantastic. Oh, there's too many books to read.
I know.
How do we do it? Kaz, shall we do top 3?
Yeah, my top 3 have been my top 3 for ages. I'm kind of cheating with my number 3 because it was an honourable mention on my list last year.
Okay. If it helps, I'm cheating because my top 3 is really a top 4, but I refuse to choose between the 2 that are number 2. So
my top 3 is going to be no surprise. It's The Treatment by Sarah Moorhead.
I knew exactly where you were going.
Yeah, because I can have it on my list officially. It wasn't published last year. I read it when it was still a Word document.
How about just so good you mentioning it twice? That's fine.
Yeah, so good I'm mentioning it twice.
That's good. I
love speculative fiction in general. I love that Sarah isn't afraid to ask the big questions. So this one looks at psychopathy. Yeah, I got that one out. And justice and how you deal with like people who are offending and things. There are comparisons with Witness X to Philip K. Dick of Sarah's writing, and they are utterly fair comparisons. She is an absolute living genius as an author. Cannot say too much about her. I'm most likely her stalker, which is a bit worrying. But it's just really good. This one is, do you know when you read a book, Witness X was my top of the year when I read it. And you know when you read a book that is so good, you worry about what the author is going to publish second, because you're like, how can they do something that is better than that? Because that's like a classic of the future. And The Treatment is better than Witness X.
Oh, and you have talked about, mithered people about, explained to Witness X to anyone who would listen for the last 2 years.
I threatened
and devastatingly, I've still not had a chance to read it yet. Can I have Sarah next time for interview so I can actually read books, please?
You absolutely can. But she's a legend, that woman.
Agreed. Yeah. Can't say enough nice things about Sarah Moorhead, honestly. Number 3 for me is Fearless by M.W. Craven. So, 5 million reasons why Ben Koenig has to disappear, only one to bring him back. Oh, I loved this book. I am going to get things thrown at me, but I think for me, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this. I think for me, it's slightly edgy, Poe and Tilly. So I shall be leaving now and going sitting in a corner somewhere so I don't get coronated. Ben Koenig is a ghost. He doesn't exist anymore. 6 years ago, it was Koenig who headed up the US Marshals Elite Special Ops Group. I still can't believe I just said that on camera, and I'm kind of a bit like, feel like I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. For 6 years, he became a grey man, invisible. He drifted from town to town, state to state. He was untraceable. It was as if he had never been. But now Koenig's face is on every television screen in the country. Someone from his past is trying to find him, and they don't care how they do it. In the burning heat of the Chihuahuan Desert lies a town called Gauntlet, and there are people in there who have a secret they'll do anything to protect. They've killed before, and they will kill again. Only this time they've made a mistake. They've dismissed Koenig as just another drifter, but they're wrong. Because Koenig has a condition, a unique disorder that makes it impossible for him to experience fear. And now they're about to find out what a truly fearless man is capable of, because Koenig's coming for them, and hell's coming with him. I don't think I need to add anything, even the blurbs are just exceptional. Ben Koenig, I just love this. I'm so glad there's going to be a second. I'm absolutely devastated there's not at the moment going to be a third. I can't wait to go to the cinema and watch this whenever it's made and released. And I just think it's fantastic. I love the idea of this concept of he's a man without fear, but it doesn't make him superhuman. You know, we're not kind of looking at that element here, and I just think it's genius. And I know he's had lots of reviews, lots of fans of this, and I just wish there was going to be more of them made and written. I really do. I thought it was exceptional.
Sounds
Karen,
amazing.
number 3.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but this book is so different. So my number 3 is a book called I, Julian by Claire Gilbert. And it's set in 1347. It's about a young Julian of Norwich who was a young woman who was her mother dies of petulance, but the Black Death, and she becomes she starts having visions. So she decides to sort of dedicate her life to the church, and in 1377 she discovers there's a position for an anchoress, which is to basically get sort of walled up inside a church and you can never leave. So you basically just become like almost like a hermit, it's called an anchoress. And she did this, that she's was a real person, and basically she spends 2 years preparing for her anchorage, and she's allowed to take a maid with her, so she takes someone. It's a really powerful read. The women in it are really strong, but then they have a desire to be independent from men, but obviously 1370 that wasn't sort of happening. But it's really interesting. I really like the sort of relationships between the women in the book. And I really was fascinated by her faith and her sort of the calling that she gets. It's just like nothing I've read before. And it's not a book that I would normally read. But it's historical, and it's just got so much in it. And there's lots, because it's true, or she's based on a true, the book is fiction, but it's based on a true story. There's lots of books and interesting stuff that you can read around the book, so which I did, which I loved. So yeah, that's my number 3.
I do love it when you find things in a book that you think, I need to learn more about that.
Yeah. Well, this was just, I mean, I like history anyway, but I'd never heard of an anchoress before. I didn't know.
No, I haven't.
And the fact they're like sort of basically cemented into, they go into this room and they basically die there. That's it. But that is their calling, I guess you would call it. That's their, that's what they want to do. So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, really, really, really interesting. Like, if you don't read, I don't read that sort of thing, so it was just a real gift of a book that came out of the blue and was amazing.
Here's where you can tell who's read all the Ruth Galloway series, because I do know what an anchoress is. But I love books like that, so I'm definitely I'm going through and like putting little stars by everybody's top 10 list for ones I need to go away and buy afterwards. It's not good.
No, not good for the bank balance.
It brings us book vouchers.
Yeah.
Number 2. My number 2 is Deceit by Unina Leo's daughter.
Okay.
Love this book. It is really interesting, and it's one of those books that you read and it stays with you after you've read it. So I read it and I was like, I really enjoyed this book, and then for weeks after I kept going back and thinking about it. And it couldn't, any other year this could have been the top of my list. It's brilliant. It's got a really unique crime idea. It's set in lockdown in Iceland. So solved during the COVID-19 pandemic. Someone is contaminating food. They're putting needles into food. And the police inspector gets her ex-husband to come and help her work out who's doing it, because he's a psychologist. And then there's another subplot in it that intertwines, and the other subplot is kind of uniquely Icelandic. It can only play out in Iceland, if you know what I mean. I don't want to give a spoiler away, but it can only be there. It could only be in that country that this plot could work. And it's absolute genius. And it also fills my little scientist heart with joy, because it's got a little science kind of subplot that I love. The only thing that makes me sad about it is that she's got so many books out in Iceland. She's very prolific author, and this is the only book that has been translated. And it's I'm missing all of that greatness.
You have to learn Icelandic, aren't you?
I need to learn Icelandic.
Don't think she won't.
Duolingo.
Could happen, yeah. But But yeah, it's amazing. It's just one of those, if you want something unique, I don't think I've read a more unique crime book ever.
Ooh. You've read a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I've read a lot, but you've read a lot. So
It is really good. Really, really, really clever.
It's really nice though, isn't it, to find that still, that you can still be, you can still be surprised, and you can still, I just think it's amazing that we can, that there's so many different ways a story can be written, even though there's only, what is it, 8 or 9 different like stories or plots, isn't there? Something like that. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, it's just, it never ceases to amaze me.
You want my number 2 books now, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. The first of the number 2 books. Excuse me.
The first of the number 2 books.
Yeah, I've got 2 number 2 books because I refused to choose, and I wasn't knocking another one off the end of the list, so I'm just playing by my own rules as per usual. So the first one is The Hiking Trip by Jenny Blackhurst. Now, before we went live, I did say that I did message Jenny after the. I'm not going to tell you what I wrote in the message. I was just completely blown away by the book, really stunned. And luckily, she said it was the best message she'd ever had. So I don't know. At some point, maybe we'll blur out some of the words I used for shock and read it out. But don't trust everyone you meet here. A young British backpacker goes missing on the West Coast Trail. No one is sure whether she died or simply disappeared, apart from Laura. 20 years later, a body has been found, and there's only one person who could reveal the secret that Laura's been hiding all this time. But she knows that 2 can keep a secret if one of them is dead. I mean, what a line that is. Absolutely. I ripped through this book. Absolutely flew through it. It's one of those that you could kind of say little bits about it, but not too much. So she finds out that a body's been found, and it all kind of goes from there for us finding out who the body is, how they knew each other, what happened on this trail, what's happening in her life now. It's one of those that I don't want to say anything about because I was just constantly gasping at different things as they happened, and I'm really scared that I will spoil it because it is so good. And this is a Canelo book. Both of the number 2 books are Canelo books, and the second one is not going to be a surprise to anyone who's ever listened to me talk about books ever. Kaz is laughing because she knows I have raved and raved and raved about this lady's books, and just, when you feel like somebody, I'll tell you what the book is first, actually. It's Black Valley Farm by Sheila Bugler, which is the second of the number 2. It was always going to be the second book on the list. There was no 2 ways about it. I just feel like Sheila Bugler writes books just for me. When you read something, you think it's as though you just kind of sat and knew what story to tell me. That is what I could say about every single one of her books. I discovered the Dee Doran books first. There's Ellen Kelly books as well. And just, this is a standalone and it's gorgeous. And I loved it. And it's secrets and lies and uncovering things that weren't what you thought they were. So the truth could ruin everything. A decade ago, the bodies of 9 people were discovered at Black Valley Farm. The only suspect vanished without a trace. Claire has spent 10 years living a lie, but a new podcast on the murders threatens to bring her carefully built life crashing down because someone else has listened to the podcast, someone who knows Claire is lying, who will stop at nothing to ensure the truth never comes to light. So, yeah, they're my 2 books, and I just love them both so much that I refuse to... I just thought they'd go really nicely together as Canelo books, and I really didn't want to bump Gordon off the bottom of the list, and I wasn't going to. So they're just number 2 together because I'm cheating to get my own one. Karen.
So my number 2 is quite a late entry because it's a Christmas book, and it's called Christmas by Candlelight by Karen Swan. And although it sounds like it's going to be sort of a traditional Christmas book, I would say, it really isn't. So I'll read a bit of the blurb. So 3 days before Christmas, it's starting to snow when high flyer Libby and her new boyfriend reluctantly attend her university reunion. Hosted by Archie Templeton, the heartbreaker of the group, in the large family estate in Yorkshire, the night is a great success. But when they start to go, the road is blocked with snow and they're stranded on the estate. So this book definitely has sort of romantic sort of links in it. It's, you know, it's a group of 6 or 8 people who were at university together. Libby was sort of like the sensible one of the group, and then she comes along and she becomes a lawyer, and she's very successful, but she's not seen any of the group for 10 years. She's sort of avoided it, but one of her friends in the group is due to have a baby and she can't put off going anymore, so she turns up with her new boyfriend Max, and the power all goes out and the book completely changes. And that is all I'm going to say. It's not the book. I spoke to Karen and I said to her, the book, the cover is nothing like I thought the book was going to be. And I loved that. And it really, I was like, I kept sort of almost like looking at it to go, well, is this? And yeah, it was just, blew me away. Loved it. Really, really loved it. It's got lots of, it's sort of got that sort of that sort of university, friends gone by sort of vibe about it. But when they get snowed in, they're in this massive house, it gets really cold quickly, and then things start to happen. It's got that sort of then there were none feel about it. And I think it's like, we're saying about the locked room, but I think like a snowed in room is good as well, where, you stranded, that sort of claustrophobic, there's no getting away from what is happening here. So yeah, a real surprise of a book it was. Number 2.
Fantastic.
Love it. It's our top books of the year.
And I'm still sat here griping that there's books I've loved that aren't in this.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard, isn't it? It's just
yeah.
It's super hard. My top book is not a surprise to anyone in the entire universe because I've not thought about it since I read it, and it has been my top book since I read it.
Yeah.
And it's The Maiden by Kate Foster. For absolutely no shock whatsoever. I'm sure everyone who's watching the video will just be like, I know what that was going to be.
Kate knows, everyone knows.
Everybody knows. And it's just, it's really clever because you start reading it and you can Google what happens. It's based on a real story. Like, you know how it's going to end because, like, there's no spoilers in it. This woman existed. She did do the crime that's in the story. She was executed for it. Like, that's all, all historical record. But I think what's interesting is that Kate's kind of taken that story and then made her own retelling of it.
Yeah.
So it's like you were saying in your book 3, it's sort of taking that real person and then, she's sort of examining the motives of why she might have done the crime that she did. And it is a bleak read, I'm not going to lie, because it's not going to end.
You really love a bleak book, though. And
I do.
Bleak is not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but I think, again, it's one of those where it's kind of really clever. She writes, there's like little bits all the way through written like, it's like coffee shop notices or bits of things from like a newspaper, and I thought they were genuinely real snippets, but they were invented by Kate.
Yeah, I thought they were real as well.
I was convinced they were real. And when I asked her in the interview, and she's like, I made them up, and you couldn't, like, they were a completely different voice to the rest of the story, and I think that was really clever. But yeah, it's fascinating. I love those kind of retellings of stories that put different spins on things, and
Sounds really good.
Not describe how good that book is. It's earned all of its awards this year.
I completely agree. And because I knew it was going to be your number one book, it didn't need to go on my list because then I can give my spot to somebody else. One of the things I always try and do is not read a book if I know Kaz has absolutely loved it. But I was interviewing Kate, so I read it. And you're right, it's a gorgeous book, beautifully written, so many different voices, so cleverly done. Everything about it is just wonderful. And I'm not surprised it stayed your number one all year.
I do have it to read. I'm going to bump it up now.
Yeah,
you definitely need to read it. Even the cover's beautiful. Everything about it is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover. Really, really beautiful.
I'm dancing because I'm my number one. Right, I'm going to give you a couple of non-fiction number ones first because I didn't know whether I was going to or not, but I am. I absolutely am. Who am I kidding? So one of them is The Organised Writer by Anthony Johnston. Brilliant, brilliant book. Just really helping to set boundaries, set guidelines, help you be creative and get everything together. And I really needed this book to add to my list of things to help me organise my brain. I can't tell you a better book that I've read that does what this book does. And when I've interviewed, I did an interview a few weeks ago and Sophie Hannah was there, and Sophie Hannah said just everything about the book was brilliant. You know, she thought everything. She didn't implement any of it because she's too busy, but she wouldn't be as busy if she implemented stuff. But yeah, brilliant, brilliant book. The other one is it's another non-fiction. Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom is one of the best things I've ever read in my entire life, and it's the story of Mitch and one of his former teachers coming together at the end of Morrie, his teacher's life, and spending Tuesdays together. And it's the tale of their friendship that has survived the teacher-student relationship and how much they mean to each other in the end. And it took me, I started reading it, and then we were so busy with the book club, I was still thinking about it. It took me 18 months to actually get to finish it.
No.
But I was constantly thinking about it because I really wanted to finish it. And obviously things get in the way, but this is how much I wanted to finish this book and see where it went. And I own, I think, pretty much all of Mitch's books, and they're all amazing. So yeah, but my number one crime fiction book. I love this book. It's not going to be a shock to anyone who's listened to me this year either. It's Exiles by Jane Harper. I'll read the blurb and try not to cry at just how much this book meant to me. It's a mother disappears from a busy festival on a warm spring night. Her baby lies alone in the pram, her mother's possessions surrounding her, waiting for a return which never comes. A year later, Kim Gillespie's absence still casts a long shadow as her friends and loved ones gather to welcome a new addition to the family. Joining the celebrations on a rare break from work is federal investigator Aaron Falk, who begins to suspect that all is not as it seems. As he looks into Kim's case, long-held secrets and resentments begin to come to the fore, secrets that show her community is not as close as it appears. Falk will have to tread carefully if he is to expose the dark fractures at its heart, but sometimes it takes an outsider to get to the truth. This book was the first book I read after we'd done our top tens and finished for the year last year, and it stayed there. It's one of those books that you know when something just hits on so many levels. You feel thrown into this community, and a lot of them have known each other all their lives, and so the friends or they're related or they work together. It's this small community in Australia, and Kim goes missing, and then this whole book is the unraveling of what happens in that year, and I'm trying to tread really carefully so I don't give anything away. but it hit the spot in pretty much any way that a book can. You know, when you pick up a book and it's literally exactly what you need, and it gives you the things that you're not getting from the actual world and just in that world. I can't recommend anything higher than I can this book. I absolutely loved it, and I feel really emotional talking about it. So I'm going to pass to you, Karen, so that I'm not crying on camera again.
No pressure. So interestingly, I'm the newbie here. Well, not so new now because I've been here a year. But when I first met Sam and Kaz last year, I think it was just before my first interview, we talked about what our favourite book was that we'd read recently. And I said this book because I'd recently read it, and literally it was the first book I read in 2023.
So all of us have gone for the first book that we read, and it's all been yours, isn't it, Kaz?
I don't think mine was the first, but it was one of the first.
It was early on, wasn't it? Because I remember you reading it.
Yeah, it was very early on.
So mine is
just me and you, Karen.
So mine is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett, and I love Janice Hallett's book. I think she's I love everything about them. I think I'll read you the blurb because actually it's a book that you don't want to give too much away about. But if you've read Janice Hallett, you'll know that she writes in a completely unique way. It's like being in a puzzle, doing a puzzle, being puzzled. So you open the safety deposit box. Inside, you found the research material for a true crime book. You must read the documents, then make a decision. Will you destroy them or will you take them to the police? Everyone knows the sad story of the Alperton Angels, the cult who brainwashed a teenage girl and convinced her that her newborn baby was the Antichrist. Believing that they had a divine mission to kill the infant, they were only stopped when the girl came to her senses and called the police. The Angels committed suicide rather than stand trial, while the mother and the baby disappeared into the care system. Nearly 2 decades later, true crime author Amanda Bailey is writing a book on the Angels. The Alperton baby has turned 18 and can finally be interviewed. If Amanda can find them, it will be the true crime scoop of the year, which will save her flagging career. But rival author Oliver Menzies is just as clever, better connected, and also on the baby's trail. As Oliver and Amanda are forced to collaborate, they realize what everyone thinks about the Angels is wrong. The truth is much darker and stranger than they've ever imagined. If you've read The Appeal and you know the sort of format, so basically you get presented with a predicament at the beginning of the book, and then you have the evidence to solve the mystery. And I just loved it. It's written in emails. It's not written in emails. It's written in emails now, but it's written in transcripts, and it's got sort of code in it. And it's just, if you like a puzzle, you know, there's WhatsApp messages, there's text messages, there's works of fiction, there's scripts, and it's all connected around this story. And I absolutely loved it. There's been nothing that has been as unique as this, and I think that's the sort of cleverness of Janice, is that her uniqueness is what stands out. And I just for me I think it was always going to be my book of the year because it was so outstanding, which is a hard act to follow on the 2nd of January.
I think we have done blooming well to even come up with a handful from the lists that we've got. This has been, I always say it, and I will probably say it next year, hardest year that I've ever had to look through the books and go, oh, I love that one, but no. Don't want to do it anymore, but I can't not do it because it's really, really fun to see what everybody's top 10 is.
Yes, and none of them are crossed.
No. And we didn't know each other's. That's absolutely, we have no idea. Although we've, talked about books that we've read.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no sharing. We were all
it's
covering
true.
our work.
No copying at all.
No copying, no.
I do love the fact that we've got completely different lists because I think the more authors we can talk about, the better.
Which is always our mission as a team of author chat people in general.
So.
And I feel really guilty for all the ones I've read that didn't make the top 10 because I loved all those. I don't think I've read any books this year that I haven't enjoyed.
No, agreed.
It's just that, you know, the pressure, isn't it? Of and I know that I'm probably going to go to sleep and then think, oh no, I forgot so and so.
We know now next year, Karen.
Yeah.
Because you were Sam and put 3 in your number 1 and 2 in your number 2.
And 7 in my...
Yeah. And do you know what? And still not have added in Victoria Dowd, Murder Most Cold, which is now on my list as well. So there you go. I had it written down. What? I don't... I'm moving swiftly on. Sorry, Victoria. I love Murder Most Cold. I love The Smart Women. What a great series. Oh, this is what's going to happen. The more we keep talking now, the more I'm just going to shove book names in because it's what I do because I'm unashamedly just want to get all the books in there.
Let's wrap up there then so we don't add any more books in.
Except, no, I won't.